Today's guest is Owen Barrett. He's the CEO of Shine. All right, Owen, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. I mean, I would take a quick look at your background. You have a lot of finance, real estate, solar, sustainability, some business stuff. It's an interesting mix.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey to get here. I think it's always interesting to when you're like living life in real time, you never really understand where things are going to lead. But then when you get to a certain point in life, you can look back and it's so obvious how like the dots are connected and how you ended up where you are. And so I do that in my career now, with my position at Shine. And at the time, I didn't love the financial industry, but it's paid off like dividends because I have to be able to speak finance. And my time in commercial real estate was rocky given the market, but we could never do what we're doing at Shine without those like 4 years in commercial real estate. So it's been cool to see how it's all come together. But yeah, it's been an interesting blend of of different professions.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about finance. You like it, the things you don't like about it. What was your finance? What part of the finance side of it were you a part of?
So interestingly, I got a degree in finance, economics and finance in 2008, which was not a good time to get a degree in finance. And so I got a job, my first job out of college, I was working at ING, big insurance company. And I saw in real time their stock go from like $104 to below $1.
Wow.
For me, yeah, I was new or my career, so it didn't have a big impact. But I saw people that had their entire savings in ING stock, and it was just, I mean, it was devastating. But then I worked for a firm in San Francisco called Glass Lewis, which no one has ever heard about until just recently because I forget who, I think it was Musk, called them like domestic terrorists, the way that they sort of manipulate like shareholder votes for public companies. And so, that's where I started my financial career. No one had ever heard of proxy research or Glass Lewis. Now everybody's heard of it because Elon's not very happy with them.
Yeah. And so how did the sustainability stuff come about?
So what I found really fascinating about finance is, it's a language of its own, right? You can tell a narrative, you can try and craft a story and convince people to do something with numbers. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I liked that aspect of it. I did not like being in proxy research. And so I went to graduate school for environmental science. I've always been really into the outdoors. I've always wanted to sort of um, design my life so that I'm working on something I'm passionate about. And
Hmm.
so for me, that meant going to grad school, getting a master's in environmental science. And the hope was that I could somehow figure out how to use this financial acumen um, in something that had to do with protecting the environment. And fortunately, that's exactly how it played out. So I got kind of lucky in that regard. But ever since then, I've been using finance to drive environmental impact.
That's so cool. I mean, you had some fairly, I guess, major roles. I guess one of them is a Fortune 100 company.
Yeah, that was a wild experience. Straight out of grad school, was hired as an energy manager for a Fortune 100 company. I think it was 2012. So I was probably mid 20s. And my first job was to convince the C-suite to implement a $10 million fuel cell. I had no idea what a fuel cell was, and $10 million was like by far the most amount of money I had ever even thought about. Um, so it was really intimidating to go into that role. But I was kind of thrown to the wolves where I immediately had to start presenting these large capital projects to a really conservative C-suite, like a former GE, basically executive team, and it forced me to get really good really fast.
And were there people around you that helped you at all? Like, or just kind of like trial and error? How
No,
was that?
I had an incredible manager at the time who, you know, I attribute a lot of my success to. I actually quit that job partly because she quit a few months before me. So she was a great manager, and she was a really good buffer in between her and her boss, the chief sustainability officer, who I did not get along with. And so as soon as she left, I knew that it was going to get a lot rockier for me because now I had no buffer between me and the CSO. And so I knew the writing was on the wall. Either I was going to have to do these projects that I was being assigned by the CSO that I didn't really like and I didn't agree with, or I'd have to go figure out something new to do.
Yeah. What's the key of convincing people to take on a 10 million or more, or making change within a large company like that?
I think if you're specific to like clean technology and the environment, it's really never talking about the environment, right? It's all the other benefits. Ultimately, C-suite does not care about the environment. They cared about, you know, the money we were going to save them. So if a fuel cell creates electricity from natural gas, so it's cheaper to do it that way than to buy it from the grid, especially in California. And this was a life sciences company. So on site, we had millions of dollars of inventory in cold storage. And so a power outage meant that all that inventory would go bad. And so it was a way to provide emergency backup for our inventory and save money on electricity. And that was that was the narrative that the C-suite wanted to hear. My department was doing it because of emissions. While we talked about that, I never once brought that up with executives because I just knew it wouldn't go very far with them.
Got it. And he founded a bunch of things. I mean, it sounds like entrepreneurship was in your blood, but you also took some jobs. When did you ultimately just sort of, cut it loose and just go off on your own?
So I was working at that life sciences company, and sort of two things happened at the same time. I was flirting with entrepreneurship, and I was coming up with a business model to replace light fixtures in parking garages with LED, because oftentimes those lights are on 24/7, and so it's just a really good project from a financial perspective. And I pitched an angel investor, and the investor told me that well, first he asked, you know, what are you doing to survive, like how are you making money? And I said, I have this corporate cushy job, and so I'm doing this like on nights and weekends. And he looked at me and said, I don't invest in part-time entrepreneurs. And that was what I needed to hear. You know, it was sort of the last straw, the last thing that I needed to hear to really convince me to go out on my own. But at the same time, that manager that I talked about earlier had just left the company. So it was like, okay, like I've got the sign from the investors that no one's going to have faith in me from a money raising standpoint if I don't have faith in myself to go out on my own. And then I knew that things were going to get just a little more challenging on my corporate job. So I just decided to go all in and go down the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So you pushed the LED company. How did that go?
Did not go well. Didn't go well. No, you know, I had no experience in sales. I didn't know what it meant to like sell anything, and so I went 18 months with no revenue, and then it's kind of pivoted into a niche ESCO, an energy services company for rural school districts, and I started by focusing on lighting projects, and so thankfully got some traction there, did a couple lighting projects, and then, you know, after we did a lighting project, schools would say, could you do solar, or could you do HVAC, and can you do this? And I had no experience in anything really. I mean, it was like you know, I was young, I had never run a company before. But I think if you're a hungry entrepreneur and you have you believe in yourself, then you just say yes and you figure it out later. And so that's what I did. Yeah, sure, we can do solar, sure, we can do HVAC, sure, yeah, we do whatever we want. Like you tell me what you want us to do, and we'll figure out how to do it. And so it just said yes to everything, and then figured out how to do it like once a contract was signed. And fortunately, it worked out really well. Probably could have gone sideways a bunch of different times, but you know, it didn't.
Yeah. And then how's the real estate piece fall into this? Because I see this on your profile.
Yeah, so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college. I've always been kind of fascinated with real estate. I never had any money to do anything with that interest. But I sold that company called Lumio, I think in 2017 or 2018, and then I started investing passively into multifamily real estate, so multifamily syndications, and noticed really quickly that the multifamily industry at large is super far behind when it comes to energy management, on-site renewable energy, energy efficiency. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to take this sort of new interest of multifamily real estate investing with my background in energy management, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and kind of bring the two together. And that was sort of that was like the beginning of this last 8 year journey that I've been on of trying to decarbonize multifamily. It's taken a bunch of different forms because it's really hard to do. But most recently, it's led me to Shine, which is what I'm working on now, and it's the same ideas, just decarbonizing multifamily real estate.
Okay, yeah. So tell me about Shine.
Well, what we noticed out of so when we started to try and figure out how to decarbonize multifamily, we realized right away that like nobody in the industry cares. They have their plan, they have their business model that they're going to do to an apartment building, and it never includes energy. And so I tried to start a
Why does it not include energy?
I think because people generally, and again, I was coming into real estate in 2018. The market has shifted like dramatically since 2018, but at the time, everybody was focused on growing net operating income by increasing revenue or rent, not by cutting expenses, which is generally where energy falls into the picture. Um, so I tried to start a consulting company called Value Add Solar that would plug into people's real estate deals and help them implement on-site solar to make their multifamily real estate deals better. Didn't work because it was like a timing. It was hard to find the right timing, and real estate companies don't want to really trust a consultant like at the point of acquisition. Um, so it was hard. So instead, we decided let's go buy our own real estate and decarbonize it with on-site solar and show the rest of the industry that if done correctly, these solar projects are accretive to the overall real estate deal. And so we bought, I think over 4 years, we bought 650 apartment units throughout the Midwest. We put solar on all of them. It was great, except we were having to buy what's called a master metered apartment building. So it's built like a hotel. There may be 300 apartment units, but there's one electric meter. But that makes the solar really easy. The challenge with those properties is they're all built in the late 60s. So the asset management side, the real estate side is really challenging because there's a lot of deferred maintenance. And so we proved that on-site solar, when done right, can increase project level returns. We also realized managing buildings from the late 60s is really hard. And so I wanted to figure out how can we take this solar value add model and apply it to individually metered apartments? So think like your average apartment building, each apartment unit has an electric meter. Each tenant is responsible for that electric account. The problem is if you want to install solar into tenant meters, you have to install one small solar system per apartment unit. So 300 unit apartment building gets 300 small solar systems. And then once it's installed, you have to figure out how do you bill 300 tenants? How do you monitor 300 small solar systems? The answer is software, but it didn't exist at the time. And so we spent all of 2023 building out this proprietary software platform that enabled us to then install solar in this very unique way. Um, and then, since then, it's just been a rocket ship of growth because it's a totally new way to install solar that multifamily has wanted to figure out, but no one's come up with the software platform to enable it. And so it's been really interesting and exciting to see that growth.
Okay, so let's say a multifamily unit that I guess qualifies wants this. Who pays what, who installs, where's the revenue come from?
Yeah, so it's all driven by the owner. Tenants and property managers generally don't really have any say in anything. So on a per unit basis, it's about a $6,000 installation cost. That's a gross cost. For the next 2.5 years, there's a tax credit of 30 to 50%. Let's call it 30%. So the net cost after the tax credit is $4,000. Um, on average, we generate about $600 per year in income per unit via solar to the owner. And so the way that multifamily real estate works is you put a cap rate on the net operating income that you're creating, and that's how you figure out how much value you're adding to the property. And so if you put a five cap on $600, it's $12,000 in value. So you're spending $4,000, you're getting $12,000 in value. It's a 3x on your equity multiple. Um, and everybody wins. Tenants save money, owners make money, and you're doing good for the planet.
Okay. And you say rocket ship. Give me any sense of scale or activity or anything like that.
We had our first customer in 2024, so we did about 500K in revenue. This year we're doing about 5 million, and next year we're on track to do like 30.
Nice. Good.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting.
Good. Awesome. What what sort of lessons have you learned over the years? You said one of them. I didn't know how to, something about not knowing how to sell and stuff like that. What's come easy for you in your entrepreneurial journey? What's come hard?
Can I say everything's come hard?
You can. I feel that.
No, I mean, I think what comes easy, I think the vision, right? The like if you're a creative person or you've lived your own problem, it's easy to come up with a solution. It is much harder to build that solution and sell that solution and scale that solution. And so I've always been sort of a big picture guy. I'm not the most detailed oriented. Sometimes it drives my team crazy, but I think about what's the big problems that we're solving and what can we go into post solar? Like what does solar lead us to? And there's a lot of really interesting things, but everything else outside of that, the vision, the ideation, it's hard. That's where the work is. The work is not in coming up with the idea. The work is in the execution.
Yeah. So what type of people that are around you help you? Like, if there's personalities or this or that, like, because everyone has kind of a unique mix. Like, what's that core team look like, in terms of skill set or how you guys communicate? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I mean I've had the same co-founder now for like technically three different startups.
Okay.
He was the guy, when I was out there selling all these projects to schools, school districts all over California. I had no idea how I was going to install, like no concept of how to install solar all across California. And this electrician that I met when I was the energy manager, I reached out to him and I said, "Hey man, I got like a big problem. It's a good problem, but it's a big problem. Like I've got $20 million in projects that I need to go figure out how to install. And I don't know how to do any of this." And so he jumped in and installed all of those projects like pretty much flawlessly. Um, and so then he was a part of the real estate company and now he's a co-founder of Shine. And I think part of the reason that we're so successful is I intimately understand finance and pretty intimately understand multifamily real estate. Like I understand it well enough to speak at a very high level with anyone. He's a master electrician and actually knows how to do the stuff that I talk about. And so, oftentimes, like at Y Combinator, they talk about having like a business co-founder and a technical co-founder. That's what we have. Granted, it's not in software, but it's in selling a project and then someone that actually knows how to go follow through and install the project. And so I think sort of that like yin and yang of founders is really powerful for us. And then we just hire hungry people, like people that just want to get after it. And I like seeing emails late at night, early in the morning. I like the ability to call people on the weekends. I don't do it all the time, but I like people that are excited to work hard, um, either because they like the mission of the company or because they like the compensation structure or both. But I think it's important to have sort of that um, shared interest in like work mentality.
Hmm. Your recruiting practice then. I mean, when you hire people, how do you know who these go-getters are? Do you test them? Do you look for certain things? What are your signs?
So this is probably, we're still really small, and this is probably not the right answer. I don't do a ton of due diligence on our employees. We we have a couple phone calls, we see if it's a right fit, and then we kind of throw them to the wolves, and they either like they sink or swim. And if they swim, then we keep them. If they sink, then we don't. We've never actually looked for any. We are looking for our first employee. Every other employee has kind of fallen into our laps. We had we have a couple competitors like on the software only front. So we're turnkey. We have a software platform. We do the installation. We do the maintenance. There's a couple other companies that are software only, which I think is a flawed business model. But um, one of these companies, the guy who was in charge of sales, like from the very beginning, probably for the last 6 years, reached out to us and said, "Hey, like, are you guys looking to build out your sales team?" And I saw what his background was, and I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, you're coming from our main competitor. Of course, we'll hire you." And then we had another one where we're getting a lot of traction in the affordable housing space. And I was working with an affordable housing group really closely with this one guy, and he saw when people see the economics, they get it. You can't unsee it. You're like, oh, like this is very accretive to our deal. And so he asked me, if I introduce you to affordable owners and they install solar, can I get some kind of finder's fee? And I was like, yeah, of course we'll do that. He ended up signing the biggest project to date for our company and made it close to $500,000 in a finder's fee. And when he saw that, he was like, "Hey, can I come work for you full time?" And I was like, "Of course you can come work for us full time. Like you've already delivered and you're not even an employee." So we've had the fortune of having really good employees come to us. We're now hiring like our first dedicated project manager. So we're going out to the market to find that. But fortunately for us, the solar industry has been super volatile for the last year or so, given the one big beautiful bill. And so there's a lot of really qualified people out there that we can kind of select from. And we're just not experiencing the the volatility that a lot of other solar companies are, like in the residential space.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. So basically, you know, have a good business model and do a good job communicating that vision.
Yeah, be fun to work with. Like give people, right? Like our sales team has uncapped commission. I talk to people all the time who have capped commission schedules for their sales team, and it's like, what, why? Like I want these guys to go blow it out of the water and like make more money than they've ever made. So I think I'm not, the best manager. I'm new at it. I'm still learning, but I played sports my whole life and I was fortunate enough to be really good at the sports that I played. And so I was often found myself in the captain role. And I think leading a team is a lot like that. Like you want to inspire people, you want to motivate them, you want to give them a reason to come to work and work hard. Same thing as being like a captain or a leader on a sports team. So I think ultimately, we want to do good work, we want to do a lot of it, and we want to have fun while we're doing it.
Yeah. What are some other things that you guys do that maybe not everyone does as a company, or at least from what you've heard?
I mean, I think the management style is like very, it's it's very hands off, like really no micromanaging. It's all results driven. So you could work 5 hours a week or 50 hours a week. But if you're getting the results that we expect you to, like, we're happy with you. Um, and I think, well, I don't know from firsthand experience, but I've talked to a lot of people that worked remote with big companies and they're kind of getting called back into the office now, or like their keystrokes are monitored if they are virtual. Like, I just don't think you need to go to that extent. It's easy to measure the effectiveness of an employee outside of how many times are they hitting their keyboard in an hour.
Yeah. What are examples for get
Like,
people's head
well,
around?
for us, it's twofold, right? It's sales and it's project management, basically, are like the two critical parts to our business. And so, on the sales side, it's easy. It's, how many leads are you bringing in, how much revenue are you driving. On the project management side, we like to do surveys post completion about, just the satisfaction of our customer, like through the installation project process. What could we have done better? Like, what went well, what didn't go well? Can we learn from it? Was it human error? Was it something else? Because a lot of times, the unfortunate part of being in the contracting business is like there's a lot of stuff that's out of our control, but we get blamed for it, like permitting and interconnection and solar. I mean, those things can have huge delays, and customers get pissed at us, even though, like, we cannot speed it up. We would love to speed up the process. We can't do anything about it. Um, but I think checking in with customers, during the projects, after the projects, just really getting their perspective of how everything went down, that helps us kind of evaluate how we're managing projects for our customers.
Okay, very cool. Is there anything, tips or stories or anything you want to pass on? Something that I haven't asked you.
I think it was so. I'm, I asked a lot of people for help early on. I was not shy in that regard. Like, I would reach out to anybody I could and ask for for help. And so now I feel obligated to return the favor. Like, when I see a young entrepreneur, especially if they went to my grad school or my college, like, reach out. I always have conversations. And I think the biggest piece of advice I could give is that, um, like, in my experience, usually businesses don't fail because it's a bad idea. They fail because the company or the founder runs out of runway. Like, things just take so much longer than you expect them to. And so I just tell people that are thinking about starting their own thing, like, come up with a business plan. It doesn't have to be a 100-page business plan. It can just be like an Excel pro forma, and try and estimate how long it's going to take you to get to revenue, and then multiply that by 4, and then make sure that you have a way to sustain yourself during that, whatever, 6 months, year, 2 years, whatever it's going to be, because you could be sitting on a gold mine of an idea, but if you run out of money and you got to go back and work full time, or you got to go move back in with your parents, or like whatever it is, that's why the business dies. And um, it's hard because nobody wants to wait. But I think being like a little bit prepared for something to take a long time is a better way to start things off.